For in my home city, we witnessed the extraordinary spectacle of a shadow cabinet minister praising the legacy of Derek Hatton and the militant tendency running the city in the 1980s. Yes, you heard it right, a member of the shadow cabinet praising a council that broke the law, fleeced the taxpayer, and brought a proud city to the brink of bankruptcy. And the ringleader is back. Derek Hatton has just been accepted back into the Labour Party after 33 years, inspired to return by Corbyn's far-left socialism, which now makes up Labour Party policy. Momentum is modern-day militant. And remember, there are 3 M's in momentum. Militant, militant, militant. Can you imagine it? This country with Corbyn, MacDonnell and Abbott at the helm. It would be a political nightmare, with Labour doing what it always does, leaving office with higher unemployment than it inherited. Now, I became a Conservative not just because of the things we stand for, like aspiration, patriotism, freedom and responsibility, but also because of the things that I stand against. The ugly, destructive, Marxist, militant socialists of the past. And I'm here today to join you to rise up as one strong Conservative force for the good of the economy, for the sake of our country, its values and our future. For bullying and intimidation should not be allowed to drive our politics into the gutter. Remember what John MacDonnell said about me? That I should be lynched. Well, he's picked on the wrong woman. And let me tell you a bit about the department Corbyn's Labour tries to malign. The Department for Work and Pensions, which has helped over 3.3 million more people into work since 2010. And it's often lost on people just how big the department is. We spend 180 billion a year, equivalent to the whole economy of a country the size of Portugal. We see around 80,000 people a day in job centres. We make 12 million payments a week for pensions, welfare, childcare, and more. And we rely on 78,000 staff. It is a department I know well, having started there in 2010. Interestingly, I'm the only minister, I believe, who has spent their whole ministerial career in one department, work and pensions, starting as parliamentary private secretary, then a junior minister, then the Minister of State, to now Secretary of State, even with a spell of unemployment in the middle. And don't think the irony wasn't lost on me when standing on stage at 5 a.m. on a May morning in 2015, surrounded by cameras, lights, people, hearing the election result I'd lost. One moment, Minister of State for Employment, the next, unemployed. So I'm delighted to be back here as Secretary of State, working with my excellent team of ministers who I'd like to thank for their dedication, commitment, and incredible hard work. Sarah Newton. Alok Sharma. Guy Opperman. Justin Tomlinson, and Peter Buscombe, along with our excellent PPSs, Rebecca Powell, and Julian Knight, and Whip Craig Whitaker. I also want to extend a massive thanks to all of the DWP's committed staff across the country. We have put the Conservative approach to welfare into practice. This, alongside sound Conservative economic policies, means we are delivering an employment revolution, guiding the country out of Labour's mess. Let's not forget, under Labour, the number of households where no one had ever worked almost doubled. In stark contrast, since 2010, we have added on average 1,000 more jobs each and every day. And despite what Labour says, the vast majority of these are full-time, permanent roles. We have created more jobs, more new jobs in the UK since 2010 than France, Spain, Ireland, Netherlands, Austria, Sweden, and Norway combined. In fact, it would take me over a month to read out non-stop all of the names of those we've helped into work, so I hope you're sitting comfortably. And youth unemployment has plummeted by almost 50%, whereas in Spain and Italy, it is almost 3 times higher, making us the envy of Europe. However, it's about more than numbers. We are helping people take control of their lives, and we are transforming the country into a great working nation, prepared for a prosperous post-Brexit future. And it is the Conservatives who have redesigned the welfare system to make it fit for the 21st century, the vision of Ian Duncan Smith. We have ditched Labour's confusing mix of benefits and tax credits. They stifled opportunities to work by creating punitive, effective tax rates of over 90%. And we have eradicated the bureaucracy, which meant people had to apply to 3 organisations for welfare: HMRC for tax credits, local authorities for housing benefit, and DWP for unemployment benefits and disability payments. Universal credit is an up-to-date system that replaces 6 benefits with 1 monthly payment and ensures work always pays. This is why and that's why Labour hate it so much. We are helping people into work and up the career ladder, the Conservative ladder of opportunity. Our employment successes haven't happened by accident, just like Labour's failures haven't either. Since becoming Secretary of State in January, I have listened to the concerns of claimants, constituents, charities, welfare organisations and colleagues, and I have made significant changes to the benefit system, including extra support for those with disabilities, more help for vulnerable young people, and more support for families. People spoke, I listened, and we'll continue to improve the system where we can and work with independent organisations to deliver vital services. Because the state cannot and should not work in isolation, it would be arrogant to suggest that it can, which is why today I can announce a new national partnership with Citizens Advice to deliver universal support across the UK with £39 million from 2019. This will help the most vulnerable get timely access to universal credit, providing budgeting advice and developing their digital skills. I want to continue to build partnerships with organisations across the country to help even more people into work. So today, I can announce from the new year, we will work with Barnardo's to provide care leavers with work experience opportunities in Barnardo's high street shops. It will give that crucial first step towards employment, all within a supportive working environment alongside trained staff and volunteers. Over the years, Barnardo's have transformed the lives of millions of children and families across the UK. They provide unconditional support without judgment, giving the space, time and help to people to get back on their feet. So as one of those children, and standing proud, thank you. Conference, we are compassionate Conservatives. We care about the vulnerable in society and how to support them. Yes, we look after the money. Yes, we balance the books to ensure we can support those who need it when they need it. But we are not a party only interested in numbers. A sound economy is part of the picture. A cohesive, caring society is the other part. If you were to believe everything you heard from the Labour Party or read on social media, you'd think we somehow were letting down the most vulnerable in society, especially the disabled. However, those who are saying we are cutting budgets are peddling fake news. So here's the real news. We have never spent more on those with disabilities and long-term health conditions. We spend over £50 billion a year, up £9 billion on 2010. But we want to do more than provide financial support. We want to help disabled people achieve their career ambitions and goals. In fact, from 2013 to 2017, we've helped 600,000 more disabled people into work through personalised and tailored support. And don't let history be rewritten. It was William Hague in a Conservative government in 1995 who introduced the Disability Discrimination Act to champion, support and help those caring values that we have in our society. It was Conservatives who created Access to Work, a scheme for disabled people to support them in the workplace. And Conservatives who introduced Disability Confident, a scheme I created and launched back in 2013, designed to help business recruit and retain disabled people and those with health conditions, and which now has over 7,500 businesses signed up to it. We are creating a real additional support. We are creating the help that disabled people need, and we are now creating additional sector champions responsible for website accessibility, product design, and countryside and heritage to amplify the voice of disabled people in this country. This is the Conservative approach to assisting those with disabilities. And we support pensioners who have worked their whole lives and contributed enormously to the success of this country. We are providing certainty in retirement through the state pension, which has increased by £1,450 per pensioner since 2010, in sharp contrast to the 75p increase pensioners received under Labour in 2000. Remember that? And we will continue to protect UK pensioners living in the EU post-Brexit by applying the triple lock to those as we do here. At the same time, we are delivering a private pensions revolution. More people than ever are saving into a workplace pension, up nearly 50% in the last 6 years and significantly driven by younger people. Through automatic enrolment, we have helped create almost 10 million new pension savers. And we will be giving people the opportunity to access their pension information through an industry-led pension dashboard, building on the government's Check Your State Pension online service. We are opening up opportunities for all through our welfare, employment and pension reforms. Only the Conservative government have a track record of success in these critical areas. We are here to give a hand up and not a hand out. We are the party of opportunity and social mobility. These values unite us all. They will also be the guiding light for our exciting post-Brexit future with a Conservative government, a UK which is working like never before and open to business, an inclusive nation with opportunities for all. Thank you.
Whether you voted leave or remain in the EU referendum, we all now want to see a Brexit that works for the whole country. The next part of this session turns to Brexit. As a party, we are committed to deliver on the results of the referendum. As we leave the European Union, we will forge a bold, new, positive role for the United Kingdom in the world, ready to seize the opportunities that Brexit will create. I now want to introduce our next two speakers. First, Ashley Fox MEP, who has been representing British interests in Brussels as the leader of the Conservative Party in the European Parliament. Since 2014, he has worked to ensure that the Conservative voice is being heard in Brussels. After this, we will hear from the Secretary of State for exiting the European Union. He has been helping this government deliver on the results of the referendum with our plan for Brexit. Both speakers have been instrumental in providing a positive and upbeat vision for Britain. Regardless of the negotiations, our country's best days do lie ahead. And now, I'd like to welcome to the stage Ashley Fox, MEP.
Thank you. Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let me start with some good news. This is my last speech to conference. But I'm not taking it personally, for this is the last speech to conference by any leader of the Conservative members of the European Parliament ever. By the time we meet again, the post will be permanently vacant, as we will have left the European Union. In other circumstances, of course, I would be sad that I would no longer have the honour to speak to you about the work of your MEPs in Brussels and Strasbourg. But as I stand before you today, I feel proud. Proud that the Conservative Party gave the people of Britain their say on our membership of the European Union. Proud that we are working so hard to implement that decision, and proud that we fully respect the result. There will be no second referendum. Implementing Brexit was never going to be easy. Indeed, it is because Brussels has got so involved in so many areas of national life that many voted to leave. And just as there was a spectrum of views about our membership of the EU, so there is a spectrum of views about what Brexit should look like. As the oldest and most successful political party in the world, we recognise that such a variety of opinions is not a weakness, but a strength. We are a broad party, and Europe is an issue on which good, patriotic Conservatives can disagree. It was right to allow Conservatives to campaign for both sides of the referendum, and it is right to expect party members to express different views on the implementation of Brexit. But let me tell you candidly, such debates must take place within a framework of respect and loyalty. We should take a lesson from the approach of the EU 27 to these negotiations. Whilst European politicians express differing opinions in private, in public, they are disciplined, united, and focused, and we must be the same. I'm sure I speak for thousands of party members across the country who simply want the government to be allowed to devote all its energy to securing an agreement in Brussels and not be undermined by disagreements in Westminster. So I call on all sides, regardless of how they may have voted, to put aside their differences and to rally to the Prime Minister as we enter the final critical stage in the negotiation. It is in the vital interests of millions of hard-working men and women across the country that a good deal is done for Britain. And they will not forgive us for exaggerating our differences and squabbling about details. They just want us to get on with it and deliver Brexit. The vast majority of our fellow citizens, from the Shetland Islands to the Rock of Gibraltar, whether Leavers or Remainers, now simply want the best possible outcome. Our job is to deliver for our farmers and fishermen, teachers and homemakers, barbers and bankers and bakers, consumers and entrepreneurs. Inevitably, compromises will have to be made, interests reconciled, balances struck. But let us keep our eyes on the prize. If we get this right, we can come through Brexit as a richer, stronger, and more united country. A country that has taken back control of our laws, but not broken off relations with our neighbours. A country that trades freely with every continent, including Europe. A conservative Britain, prosperous, independent, and free. Thank you. And now I introduce the man who's going to deliver that prosperous, independent and free Britain, Dominic Raab.
Well done. Good morning. I want to start with an appeal for tolerance. We all know that Brexit is a controversial subject. It excites strong passions. But as a party and as a country, we also need to keep a sense of proportion. Everybody had a vote. Most people have an opinion. But only a small minority think it's worth fighting over, except when they're on Twitter. It's important to remember that the person sitting next to you, on the bus into town, at your desk at work, round the breakfast table, and yes, here in this hall today, may have voted the other way to you in the referendum. That's the genius of our democracy. We express our differences at the ballot box, but afterwards we come together and respect the result. When it comes to wanting what's best for Britain, we're all on the same side. As someone who campaigned to leave, not only do I respect the opinions of those who wanted us to stay in the EU, I'd go further. I think they made some important arguments and highlighted some difficulties that some on my side were too quick to dismiss. Disentangling our laws, our institutions, our economy from Brussels after more than 40 years of EU membership was never going to be entirely straightforward or risk-free. To rise to the challenge, we'll need some unity of purpose, and I believe we're at our best when we work together to forge something bigger than the sum of our parts, as a government, as a party, and as a country. For my part, I'm lucky to have a brilliant ministerial team with Martin Callanan, Robin Walker, Suella Braverman, and Chris Eaton-Harris working tirelessly to deliver the very best Brexit we can. And the reason I accepted the Prime Minister's offer to join the Cabinet is because my approach to Brexit is pragmatic, not dogmatic. Do I think the deal we're pursuing is perfect? Of course not. Is it everything I wanted? No, it isn't. This is a negotiation. There have been compromises. We're not decoupling or as quickly or as completely as some would like. And we've been prepared to accept certain EU requirements in order to secure our own interests. I've been back and forth to Brussels negotiating the details of our withdrawal agreement and the framework for our future relationship. The vast majority of the withdrawal agreement has been settled, although we've still got some tricky issues outstanding, and we're making good progress on the future relationship. We've been reasonable. Some say too reasonable. But our proposals would deliver a historic agreement that provides a roadmap out of the EU and a final deal that will be good for the whole country. A deal that delivers on the referendum, because that's our democratic duty. A deal that manages the risks of Brexit, because that's our responsibility. And a deal that grasps the opportunities of Brexit, because we're at our best when we're optimistic about the future. And a deal that protects our precious union, because we are the Conservative and Unionist Party. To those of my fellow Eurosceptic colleagues who think it's not good enough, I'd just say this. If I'd have told you 3 years ago that we were going to end free movement, stop the vast annual budget contributions, leave the single market, get out of the customs union, pursue an independent trade policy, make Parliament supreme, protect the union, exit the common fisheries policy, and ditch the common agricultural policy, you'd have bitten my arm off. If the EU match our ambition and our pragmatism, that's what our proposals will deliver. I said if the EU matches our ambition and our pragmatism. Unfortunately, that wasn't on display at Salzburg. Our Prime Minister has been constructive and respectful. In return, we heard jibes from senior leaders. And we saw a starkly one-sided approach to negotiation, where the EU's theological approach allows no room for serious compromise. And yet we're expected to cast aside the territorial integrity of our own country. If the EU want a deal, they need to get serious, and they need to do it now. At the same time, as in any negotiation, we will listen to the alternative ways of delivering on the strategic criteria we've set out, because a good deal is the best outcome for everyone. But our willingness to compromise is not without limit. We're leaving the EU in fact, not just in name. If we can't obtain a deal that secures that objective, if an attempt is made to lock us in via the back door of the EEA or the customs union, if the only offer from the EU threatens the integrity of our union, then we will be left with no choice but to leave with no deal. That's why the whole of the machinery of government is busy preparing for a no-deal scenario. Not because we want it, not because we think it's likely, but because it might happen. Some people say that no deal is unthinkable. Wrong. What is unthinkable is that this government or any other British government could be bullied by the threat of some kind of economic embargo into signing a one-sided deal against our country's interests. Now, when it comes to no deal, we've heard some pretty lurid predictions from the prophets of doom. They claim planes will be grounded, the ports will be blocked. Let's have some common sense here. Why on earth would any of those things happen unless someone decided to make them happen? Even if we can't secure a comprehensive deal with the EU, I have to say I find it hard to believe they would, for narrow political reasons, seek to punish Britain in such a crass and counterproductive way, threatening European as well as UK businesses and jobs. But if I'm wrong about that, it's hardly an attractive argument for those suggesting we should stay in the club. The reality? Yes, there are risks and potential short-term disruption, but we'd deal with them and any other problems that might arise in the no-deal scenario in a calm and sensible manner, as we've already started to set out with our 77 technical notices, from aviation to car insurance. But beyond all the complexities of Brexit, one thing must be sacrosanct: democracy itself. Two years ago, we had a referendum in which more people voted than at any time before or since. Like any national vote, there were claims and counterclaims and plenty of controversy. It was ever thus. Democracy is rough-edged, not clean-cut. But one thing was crystal clear, and we all know it in our hearts. It was even written on that government leaflet that was sent out to every household. Let me just remind you what it said. This is your decision. The government will implement what you decide. Well, we did decide. It was close, but it was clear. Britain voted to leave the EU. Respecting the result, that's the essence of our democracy. And I have to say, I'm heartened by the fact that the majority of those who voted to remain have accepted the referendum verdict. For them, the integrity of our democracy is far more important than winning or losing on any one individual issue. But I'll tell you what's not democracy. The efforts of a small but influential group of senior politicians and establishment figures to overturn the result of the referendum. They want to stop us leaving. You can just picture them sitting in an expensive advertising agency discussing how to claim that black is white. Our research shows that the public doesn't like the idea of a second referendum. That's all right. We'll rebrand it a people's vote. They might buy that. But there's a real sense that leave one fair and square. Most people just want to get on with it. Don't worry, we'll bankroll a campaign to scare the wits out of them. Hang on. All that Project Fear stuff didn't work too well first time around. That's because it wasn't scary enough. This time, we'll claim that no deal will mean patients won't get their medicines, mobile phone roaming charges will go through the roof, debris will fall from the sky. Honestly, it would be pathetic if it wasn't so dangerous. And under Jeremy Corbyn, the Labour Party has now opened the door to reversing Brexit. A clear breach of their manifesto promise, a deliberate tactic to weaken the negotiating position of the UK for their own narrow political gain. Just imagine for a moment if they succeeded. Trust in our democracy would all but vanish. Most people, whether they voted Leave or Remain, would see it for what it is. A shameless ruse by an establishment that thinks it has the right to keep asking the same question until it gets the answer it wants. And who would benefit? If there's mass disillusionment with the system, then it's the populists, the far left, the alt-right, who will reap the reward, as they have in other countries where the establishment has ignored people's concerns, where voters have been told that their hopes and their fears are not important because the establishment knows best. And because of that, in many of those countries, it's the extremists who are on the march. That's where this kind of disdain for democracy leads. You don't think it could happen here? Just take a look at the Labour Party. A few years ago, the moderates of New Labour were in charge. We had our differences with Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, big differences. But there was also a shared understanding about the basic freedoms and tolerance that shore up our democracy and the civilised conduct of politics. Give or take a couple of punches from John Prescott. So what happened? Left-wing extremists, long confined to the margins, took their chance and took control of the Labour Party. Today, those extremists are led by Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell. They've captured the Labour Party lock, stock and barrel. And under the nose of Labour's leaders, they're using all the tools in the extremist armoury. Intimidation, fanaticism, scapegoating, especially against Jews. The cozying up to Holocaust deniers and terrorists, the casual equation of Jews with the Israeli government, the vicious abuse levelled at their own Jewish MPs. That a once great mainstream party should stoop so low is a stain on Britain. I say to Labour, you'd be surprised how many British people take this personally. They know things you choose to forget. 80 years ago, in 1938, Nazi Germany was invaded Czechoslovakia. The lucky few fled, some of them to Britain. One Jewish family arrived in England with a little boy called Peter. He was 6 years old and he spoke no English. That little boy grew up knowing that his grandmother, his grandfather, most of his relatives, the loved ones left behind, had been systematically murdered for no other reason than that they were Jews. That little boy learnt English. he got into a grammar school. He grasped the opportunities and embraced the tolerance that our great country has to offer. He became a food manager at Marks and Spencer. He married a clothes buyer, Church of England girl from Bromley. But he never forgot what happened to his family. That little boy was my father. And I will honour his memory by fighting the scourge of anti-Semitism and racism until my last breath. Because none of us can rest until Corbyn, McDonnell and their extremist gang have been driven back to the margins, where they belong. And none of us should give succor to Labour's political opportunism on Brexit, which has just one aim: to put Jeremy Corbyn in Downing Street. That's why we must come together over Brexit and recognise that what divides us is nothing compared to our struggle with the Labour Party. An epic struggle we must win, not just to defend people's jobs and livelihoods, but to preserve the free and tolerant democracy that we cherish in this country. Conference, it's time for us to stand together to make a success of Brexit, so that the United Kingdom goes from strength to strength. I know we can do it. I know we will do it, because I believe in the British people. I'm an optimist, not the rose-tinted kind. I'm a stubborn optimist who believes we breathe life into hope through the tenacity of our efforts. And I'm optimistic history will judge Brexit not on the tortuous haggle we're having with Brussels, but as a springboard to a buccaneering global embrace of free trade, to boost our amazing SMEs with wider export opportunities, to create the jobs of the future, to cut tariffs and reduce the cost of living for low and middle income families, and to give the poorest countries in the world their chance to trade and stand on their own 2 feet, the surest route to real economic independence. I'm optimistic because I see that Britain is a country bursting with talent. Scientific talent, creative talent, entrepreneurial talent. We have a dynamic culture that takes the best of what we've got and mixes it with bold innovations in every field of endeavour. Our strength is that we keep producing and attracting amazing people who want to contribute to something bigger than themselves, to something bigger than the sum of its parts. That's why we're delivering Brexit. Yes, to control immigration and regain public trust in the system, but also to expand our global horizons so we attract the best and the brightest from around the world, to invent the next life-saving drug, to pioneer the next breathtaking technology, to help us write the next chapter in our history. Above all, I'm optimistic we will deliver Brexit faithful to the referendum, a springboard to democratic revival, to take back control over our own destiny, so that politicians like me never forget the humility that makes us accountable to all of you. We've had our arguments, but now is the time to put them behind us. Now is the time to come together, because this is a moment for the optimists, and ours is a country ready to shine. Thank you.
few comments. As a party, it is really important that we hear from our party members. This year, we, your senior volunteers elected by you, have lobbied hard to ensure that there are as many opportunities as possible for members to ask questions and to speak. I'm delighted that this year we have more contribution slots available to party members. It gives me great pleasure to welcome our first 3 contributions to the stage. We'll hear from Graham Evans, Katrina Sale, and Jeremy Rice MacDonald. Graham.
Thank you. Good morning, conference. I'm Graham Evans from Weaver Vale. While doom-mongers in Labour and the media try to paint a tragic picture of Brexit, we are more positive. We look at the positives of those most British parts of our economy and culture that will help us to navigate post-Brexit. Those robust industries that have grown in the face of economic uncertainties, that are not solely reliant upon exports, that are primarily domestic in their customer base. No sector ticks those boxes as comprehensively as hospitality, a sector that deserves a greater voice in informing policy as we exit the EU. Too often taken for granted, hospitality has a huge presence in every constituency. It provides services that we use every day and is where so many of us got our first taste for work. I certainly worked in a pub, and that's where I met Mrs. Evans. It is the UK's 3rd largest private sector employer, providing more jobs than motor manufacturing and transport combined, and twice that of financial services. It is 130 billion annual turnover, is more than automotive, aeronautics and pharmaceuticals put together. This is equivalent to the entire UK defence budget, and it accounts for nearly 3/4 of tourist visitor spend, nearly 25 billion in itself. Although it comprises nearly 90% SMEs, hospitality is very, very big business. It now has one unified voice in the new trade body, UK Hospitality, but it has many diverse policy interests. We must look at how we best nurture commercial growth in these bulwark sectors of our economy, those that will be crucial in helping us to navigate our way through post-Brexit waters. I've been leading UK Hospitality's calls for a Minister for Hospitality to bring together the many areas of policy concerns and challenges facing the sector, to help hospitality to help us all. Because Britain does hospitality like no other nation, with unrivaled talent, innovation and tradition. Great Britain is, and always will be, a great place to live, work and visit because of our hospitality. Let's recognise that fact, celebrate our venues and listen to this crucial and valuable great British sector. Conference, I hope to see you all down at the pub. Thank you.
Good morning, conference. Today, I want to talk to you about what the Conservative Party could gain from offering more support to entrepreneurs. I've been an entrepreneur for about 4 years now, and I made the choice to leave a stable salary and a pension scheme and everything that comes with it, because I believed that through creativity, innovation, and determination, I could change the world. And I am in great company. In the UK, we start over 2,500 new businesses every single battle for young hearts and minds. How can this be? The second benefit of supporting entrepreneurship and putting it at the centre of our domestic agenda is that it will align our values with theirs and restore a generation's faith in our party. And the third benefit, entrepreneurs and innovation will be vital in a post-Brexit world. Through the complexities of Brexit, they will continue to create new jobs, forge new global relationships, and create new ways to attract wealth into this country. So, conference, I have 3 specific actions I would like you to take away. Of the 2,500 new businesses started every single day, only 500 will make it to year 2. So I want to see the government continue to remove red tape and offer support to entrepreneurs so we can increase this number. In particular, I would like to see more incentives to support female entrepreneurs who currently only make up 1/5 of our entrepreneurs and only receive 9% of startup funding. It's a huge opportunity. We are the party that delivered 2 women prime ministers. We know the power of women in leadership, and we must remove the barriers that hold them back. Secondly, I would like to see the party system embrace an entrepreneurial approach and modernise in a big way. It's hard to call ourselves the party of innovation when we still use paper forms and some of our teenage members still feel compelled to wear a suit and tie. I appreciate the party is taking great steps in this regard, but we must act quickly if we want to be seen as the party of the future. And finally, I would like to ask you, conference, to support entrepreneurs in your local community. If you are looking for an investment, invest through the Seed Enterprise Investment Scheme. It is an amazing opportunity. If you have experience, mentor a founder. And if you have the choice to shop locally, shop from a startup, please do. And conference, let's talk up and be proud of what our party has done for entrepreneurs in the past and what it will continue to do in the future. Thank you.
Conference, thank you for the opportunity to speak about opportunities for all today. As you can see, we've had the hall specially decorated for this speech and no magnetic letters today. I'm a councillor for Trossachs and Teeth. It's a beautiful ward in Stirling. My background is invention and retail, an eclectic mix, but problem-solving sales and customer service skills are ironically exactly what a politician needs. This is the party of opportunity and helping people maximise their full potential. But the search for work is not always easy. I found this recently when trying to find a nighttime shelf stocking role that balanced with my council duties. But my challenge is nothing. If you have a disability, visible, invisible, mental or physical, if someone relies on you for their care needs, you have had traumatic experiences in the military, or you have been in care and aren't fully equipped for work, the challenges are massive. The excellent Disability Confidence Scheme gets employers to employ and actively support disabled colleagues, but we can go further. My solution is the Work Abilities Portal, a digital database that is free, national, updated by specialist charities and organisations that understand these challenges best. With useful information, case studies, tools and examples of best practice, a resource for employers and employees to reduce the unhelpful Google searches and increase understanding and support. This would not only benefit employees, but employers as well, through more engagement and productive employees. I would also like to have advice to not only get employees into work, but to support them while they're there and guide them to higher career pathways. I think developing everyone, leaving no one behind, or just simply ticking a box. Similar systems do exist, but they're expensive, underused, and the information is inconsistent. So where am I with this concept? Well, I've talked to many charities and politicians, and now have a charter that they can sign to document the support I've received. I am now in the how on earth do I do this phase, and I'm exploring working with the government, setting up a social enterprise, but regardless, I'm determined this resource will be there for all, to make sure everyone is valued, enabled, and never left behind. WAP will be free, accurate, positive, and will supercharge the government's disability confidence scheme. Employers supporting their employees' challenges must be the norm, not the exception, so we can truly offer opportunity for all. Thank you.
Conference, we are delivering the transport and infrastructure to make Britain a truly fit for the future. Overall, it has improved significantly in the last decade. Further improving our transport network is at the heart of the plan for continuing to grow the economy and boost productivity. From my own experience in both local government and in industry, I can tell you how important this is. Making sure that we help businesses across the country deliver better, higher-paying jobs. Because our roads, rail, and air networks are at the heart of our economy. We have seen the biggest railway modernisation programme since the Victorian times, and the largest road building programme since the 1970s. And some of the most significant infrastructure projects in Europe. This is in no small part to the hard work of an excellent Conservative Secretary of State, who has served with distinction across a number of challenging government briefs before taking up his current role in 2016. I'm delighted to introduce to you the Secretary of State for Transport, Chris Grayling.
Good morning. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're a party and this is a government that's dealing with some pretty big decisions. But we're a party and a government that does take big decisions. And you know, we're a party and a government that is doing things that others have run away from for decades. And as Transport Secretary, I am really proud to be part of a government who, after 50 years of delay, finally got a parliamentary majority on both sides of the House in favour of expanding Heathrow Airport. It's a no-brainer, really. Our flagship airport's full. There are airlines queuing up to fly from it. There are cities all around the United Kingdom which need to be better connected to the outside world. And of course, we've got some great airport success stories. Manchester, Belfast, Leeds Bradford, Newcastle, Edinburgh, Glasgow, Cardiff, and of course just down the road here in Birmingham. But we really do need a strong hub airport to succeed. And the vote in Parliament, with a majority of nearly 300, has set us on the path to delivering that expanded Heathrow. But beyond Heathrow, it's not just about expanding Heathrow, we've also given our regional airports freedom to expand as well. As I say, we've got some great regional airports, and today I can announce our recommitment to one of those airports, Newquay. Those of you who live down there know how important it is to the economy of the South West, and we in government provide support to the crucial air links to London. And I can say today, we are going to be renewing that support for another 4 years, and with the jets that our fantastic team of Cornish MPs have been calling for. It's the right thing for Cornwall and the South West. And while we're on the subject of teams, let me say a word of thanks to mine. sitting down in the front row. My ministers, Jo Johnson, Liz Sugg, Jessie Norman, and I think a particular pat on the back for the first female Muslim government minister in the Commons, Nuz Ghani. And we've got two great PPSs, James Heapy and Bim Afolami, a great Commons whip, Michelle Donnellan. We've also got a new guy in the Lords, a fresh new young whip, someone you might have heard of, Lord Young, or Sir George Young, as he was when he was Transport Secretary. A great addition to the team and a great team player. And I'd also like to say a big word of thanks to Stephen Metcalfe for the fantastic work he's doing as Government Envoy for the Year of Engineering. Thank you to all of you. Of course, it hasn't always been an easy year for aviation. When I stood in front of you just a year ago, I had come back from Manchester Airport, where I'd met the first flight bringing passengers back after the collapse of Monarch Airlines. In the following days, we brought back nearly 100,000 people. And when I say we, it was a huge team effort involving other UK airlines, the Civil Aviation Authority, and 10 government departments. Everyone working together to get people home, and I'm proud of that swift response. It was a tribute to what this country can do in times of change. You know, the loss of Monarch was a sad day, but our aviation sectors continue to thrive. The Monarch planes are now flying again under different colours. The slots at the airports were snapped up quickly, and our successful aviation industry moved on to meet new challenges. I'm proud to live in a country where our industries and our businesses instinctively know how to adapt and grow following changes. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what will happen to this country after Brexit, regardless of the outcome of the negotiations. And just a word to those who say Brexit will mean the planes stop flying. They are doomsayers who do not know what they are talking about. So, ladies and gentlemen, whilst our aviation sectors had a strong year, the same cannot be said of our railways. I have already apologised for the disruption caused by the failures in the introduction of the new timetable in May. It was unacceptable, and I want to say again how sorry I am that so many passengers had such a difficult time. For us as Conservatives, it was particularly frustrating because the new timetable is actually part of a big investment programme in the railways to deliver more trains and more seats for passengers in both the north and the south. The chaos cannot and will not be allowed to happen again. But it's also clear that the system has greater challenges than just a failed timetable introduction. In the past 20 years, the railways have been going through an extraordinary period of growth. The number of passengers, the number of trains on the railways have doubled. The trains are packed, the network's creaking. Passengers experience too many things going wrong. And we need to look after them when that happens, which is why today I can announce we're going to take a further step forward on compensation and introduce one-click compensation for delays and disruption, making it easier for people to claim compensation when they deserve to receive it. But we've got to make sure the railways work better for customers. As I say, it's frustrating for us because as Conservatives in government, we're spending more on rail than any government in modern times. New trains all over the country, upgraded tracks, new routes across the north and the south and the Midlands, and indeed, actually, after a decade under Labour, when things stood still, leaving us much ground to catch up. Do you know, we hear about the north from them. They let a Northern Rail franchise with absolutely no investment in it at all. That's Labour and the North. What do? We let a Northern Rail franchise, which is replacing and refurbishing every single train across the whole of the north of England. That's what Conservatives deliver in government. Labour fail, Conservatives deliver. But I think we all know, and I certainly know, the industry is not making the best of that investment. It is clear that the way our railways are run no longer works when the system is under pressure. Now, last year I said to you we'd started a process of evolution towards a more joined-up railway, with single teams running the track and the trains. But the conclusion I've reached in the last few weeks is that evolution is no longer enough. We need revolution, we need big change. And that is why 2 weeks ago, I announced an urgent review of the way our railways work and how we move forward with the necessary reforms, led by the former Chief Executive of British Airways, Keith Williams. We do need that wholesale change. I've asked Keith to set out the best way of delivering just that, and to do so quickly. We'll publish a white paper on delivering a rail revolution for Britain next year, and we will then begin work immediately to deliver a more passenger-focused and reliable railway. But I'm also going to disappoint our opponents, because it's not going to stop us from investing in our railways. We're not going to pause. We're not going to hold back on that investment programme. And in fact, here in Birmingham, just a couple of days ago, Andy Street and I were unveiling designs and plans for the expansion of this city's rail network by reopening one of the lines that was lost by British Rail more than 50 years ago. And it's worth saying that partnership is what can be achieved when there is a strong relationship between a fantastic Metro Mayor and a Secretary of State. Andy's actually doing a fantastic job for Birmingham. It's great to work alongside him. And actually, yesterday we did another visit together, down to see the first piece of construction on the site of the new HS2 station. The work on HS2 has already begun. It's already helping regenerate part of Birmingham. It's already employing 6,000 people. And when it's finished, HS2 will ease pressure on our overcrowded rail network. It will help us tackle that rail challenge. But you know, it wasn't actually rail that put Birmingham on the transport map. This is one of the great centres of our automotive industry. And whilst there's an awful lot of talk about trains and planes, actually it's what happens on our roads that will make the biggest difference to all of you. I know that most people depend on a good road system in their daily lives. And we have to help improve that system. Demand for road transport's grown enormously. There are more and more cars and lorries on our roads. More and more people who depend on our roads for their livelihoods. So we've launched the biggest roads upgrade programme for decades, investing every single penny you pay in car tax back into improving the roads you drive on. We're expanding capacity on the motorways with a smart motorways programme that's adding space for motorists from Portsmouth to Oldham. It means an extra lane and less congestion for you. We've just opened the last leg of motorway grade road from London to Newcastle. Heaven alone knows why it didn't happen years ago, and it certainly didn't happen while Labour were in power. You know, again, they accuse us of doing nothing for the North. They were the ones who neglected the North for so long, leaving us to play catch-up today. And the same is true, not just in the North, but across the whole country, where Labour did nothing. We're doing plenty. We're moving ahead with dualling the A303, providing crucial improvements for the South West. We're upgrading the A14 through East Anglia. We're starting work on a new crossing to ease the pressures on the M25 at Dartford. But you know and I know, it's not just motorways and the big A roads that need investment. So we're also now moving ahead with plans to upgrade what we call the major road network, the next tier down of roads, which plays such an important part in good regional connections. And today I'm able to announce the details of the first 5 schemes in that programme, which will now start in development. A new section of the York Outer Ring Road, modernising Gallows Corner in East London, the infamous farmyard bottleneck, literally the main road through a farmyard, Grisbeck Bypass near Barrow-in-Furness, the A614 near Ollerton in Nottinghamshire, and we're going to be building new slip roads in Thurrock. And we're now going to set about the work with those local authorities to move ahead with those schemes and deliver further details of what we're going to be doing in the spring. But I think you also know there's another problem on our roads. I'm acutely aware that we have problems with the condition of our roads in many areas. Potholes are a blight on every motorist, and too many are caused by poor road repairs. Now, in government, we're already spending record amounts helping fix potholes. But I intend to move ahead with further measures this autumn to tackle this blight of poor repairs and potholes and continuous damage on our roads. We have got to deal with this issue, and we've got to deal with it properly, and we've got to improve things for motorists. But it's also not just about building and maintaining roads. There's a revolution coming in the way we use those roads. Low-emission cars, driverless vehicles, smart data that improves the way we plan journeys. 3 weeks ago, in this very conference centre, we held the first international zero-emission vehicle summit, attracting visitors from around the world, as well as great UK innovators. You know, making the transition to a new generation of ultra-low and zero-emission vehicles is one of the most important challenges of our time. We have to face up to the challenge of climate change, particularly when road transport is one of the biggest contributors to it. We've got to improve air quality in our cities. The health of our citizens depends upon it. That's why we're committed to ending the sale of new diesel and petrol cars by 2040, and to make rapid progress towards greener vehicles now. But there's one thing I also want to be clear about, particularly here in the West Midlands. Newer diesel cars today are cleaner than ever before, and of course, there will be a role for diesel for many years to come as new technology evolves. But actually, if you're a motorist driving just in and around our major towns and cities, you're much better off today looking to an electric or ultra-low emission vehicle to become the obvious choice for you. And thanks to what we're doing, thanks to the work of this Conservative government, motorists are already buying in to that need for change. Do you know in August, 1 in 12 of the new cars sold in this country were ultra-low emission vehicles, and that number is going to rise and rise. And we will continue to do everything we can to support that transition, supporting research into new battery technology at the Faraday Centre, incentivising buyers of low-emission vehicles, cars, buses and vans. All of this is one of the great challenges for our generation, and it's one we will make sure that we meet. But you know, it's more than an electric revolution. We're now rapidly approaching the era of the driverless car. Well, I expect all of you know from your own cars, every new model launched today seems to do more and more for itself. I expect the first truly driverless car to be on our roads within 3 or 4 years. And it is going to transform people's lives, particularly the elderly and the disabled, for whom there'll suddenly be far more opportunities to be mobile. It'll change the way we use cars in our big towns and cities. And the technology will also play a part in helping deliver much better public transport. But I don't need to say this to a room of Conservatives. It's not just about our cities. I'm only too well aware of the need to improve public transport in our rural areas and smaller towns. And we're already seeing some exciting new developments, signs of change that can actually help us meet that very real challenge. New bus services, for example, starting that respond just to a click on your mobile phone. They don't just follow a set route, they are flexible to meet the needs of local communities. And of course, new types of vehicle will help. Those autonomous vehicles, large and small, like the driverless pods being developed by the great firm Westfield here in the West Midlands. This is a revolution that is truly going to transform lives and transform the way that we travel around our towns, our cities, and in our countrysides. And ladies and gentlemen, we are a government that will drive real change for the travelling public, and also not forgetting those who ship freight around the country. We're going to deliver more capacity, greener journeys, smart use of technology. We're going to support our flourishing shipping industry and ports. We're going to spend money supporting new cycle routes in our cities. We're doing all of that already. And above all, what we're doing is we are investing in transport in a way that Labour never did. It's always the same, they always promise the earth. They're doing it again now, they did it last week in Liverpool. But in government, they deliver very little. Conservatives are not like that. The transport investments we're making will be essential to our country in the post-Brexit world. If we are to be a dynamic entrepreneurial country, if we're to be a truly global Britain, we need the roads, the railways, the ports, and the airports to support that. There's much to do. There are problems to solve, but we will deliver for Britain. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let me say a word about Brexit. You know that I was the first cabinet minister to declare publicly for Brexit. I believe passionately that Britain is doing the right thing. I've represented Britain on different European councils for the past 8 years. I've seen the workings of the EU and what it needs to do to secure its future. But I believe that the EU's needs are not Britain's needs. I believe we're better outside, as good friends and neighbours, not part of the march towards a federal Europe. So no one should doubt my Brexit credentials. We are doing the right thing. But so is our Prime Minister. I want us to make sure we get out. I want us to be in charge of our own destiny. But I also want what I think is right for the country, which is a partnership in trade, security and research. It makes sense for all of us. I hope and believe we can agree that partnership. And yes, we are making preparations in case we cannot. We're planning for all eventualities right across our transport system, and we have been for months and months and months. I know that under Theresa May, this country will not accept a deal that's bad for Britain, or one that is bad for the Union, that is the United Kingdom. We know that. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is why I am backing, that is why we should all back our Prime Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, believe it or not, it's almost 100 years since the first Labour government. You know, we know, they have always taken Britain backwards. They've always cost people jobs. They sit on the sidelines promising everyone everything, and then they leave most people worse off in the end. And they have never been so extreme and dangerous as they are today. We cannot allow the election of the most extreme Labour government this country has ever seen. So we have to stick together. We have to unite to deliver Brexit. And then we have to take the battle to a group of Marxists who would wreck this country for decades. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a historic task, but it is one where we absolutely must succeed. Thank you.
Conference, we are now going to hear from our second round of contributors. It gives me great pleasure to welcome to the stage Tim Law, Siobhan Bailey and Johnny Luck.
Good morning, Conference. I'd like to talk about an area where the UK government has been and remains in a leading role, influencing global policy by actions as well as words. An area directly related to the UK and broader global economy, and for the benefit of communities and small and large businesses here and overseas. In June 2013, during the UK's presidency of the G7, we spoke of the golden thread of trade, tax and transparency, and specifically referenced beneficial ownership, meaning transparency about who really owns companies and who benefits from them. Beneficial ownership transparency is firmly on the international agenda and is likely to become the norm within a few years. Many see this as a key tool in the battle against money laundering, corruption, and the financing of criminal activities, including terrorism. The UK has long been a supporter of the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, or EITI, and the UK joined in 2014. Beneficial ownership transparency now forms part of the EITI standard, and all 51 EITI countries are working on implementing beneficial ownership disclosure for extractives companies by the 1st of January 2020. Some countries are now introducing the concept of beneficial ownership into their domestic legislation, and undertaking efforts to allow that disclosure of information, something the UK has had in place for 2 years. This government has continued to demonstrate leadership through measures to oblige UK-dependent territories to introduce beneficial ownership registers, and has spearheaded moves to uncover the beneficial ownership by overseas companies of UK real estate. But it's important to recognise that beneficial ownership transparency isn't just about tackling crime and illicit financial flows. It's about creating an open environment of good governance that attracts and enables investment. Transparency in beneficial ownership allows businesses to know who they are really doing business with. So what next? This UK government continues to promote and support broader adoption of beneficial ownership disclosure and assess the level of technical assistance required to help countries establish registers. A number of countries have now made initial moves towards transparency in beneficial ownership, but the lack of a consistently applied global standard and, in some cases, capacity constraints means that progress is slow. This is a prime example of where the UK has and will continue to have an influential role on the global stage, and I applaud the efforts of this government, HM Treasury, and the Department for International Development in driving forward this agenda. Thank you.
Conference. We must be confident in our conservative principles and values. It is our approach to the economy based on those principles and values that has allowed us to reduce the deficit by 3/4, cut employment to the lowest levels since the 70s, increase exports of British goods, and see the number of businesses rise by 1.2 million. But we must not be deaf to the real issues that many people face. For some families, a successful economy may feel like something happening to others, something they hear about on the telly. I have worked with enough families during my time as a family lawyer to know that financial pressures at home damage relationships. They reduce the ability to look up, hope, and dream. So in Stroud, I kicked off my candidacy talking to people about their finances and cost of living, not the macro stuff. I want people in my constituency and the country to know that the Conservatives are always listening, and we want families to thrive. We believe that their money is better off in their pocket to spend as they wish. And we have them in mind when we are creating millions of full-time jobs, cutting income tax for 31 million people, freezing fuel duty so journeys are cheaper, and cutting stamp duty for first-time buyers. There's many more successes, but there's also much more to do. And to Labour. I say that your failed dogmatic socialism did not hold the answers in the past, and it certainly does not hold the answers for the future. Seeking to help the many is not good enough. We need an economy that works for everyone. Your reckless approach to the UK economy will not help the people who rely on a healthy economy in times of need. Your politics of envy, division and interference will do nothing for workers, our businesses or the country. But most of all, I say to Labour, success is not a dirty word. The Conservatives are the party for aspiration. The Conservatives are the party of opportunity. The Conservatives are the party for low taxes. And the Conservatives are the party for jobs. We must be confident in our principles and values, as only the Conservatives can deliver an economy that works for everyone. Thank you.
Hi there. The Conservative Party is for the young entrepreneur. We love making things happen. We love solving problems, and we love enterprise. I was the CEO of the National Association of College and University Entrepreneurs, or NACU. This is a network of enterprise societies across 260 educational institutions in the UK, representing thousands of mainstream, highly passionate young people that love business and creating value. You see, the left, through the National Union students, puts pressure for young people to be exposed to one view, while they don't have it their own way. NACU has shown that it's possible to build a national coalition of mainstream young people that care about free market principles, as well as develop the practical skills and grit you need in life. Through these enterprise societies, we've helped improve test scores by giving context to why people should learn maths and English through selling products in market stalls. We've also helped founders with funding, networks, and mentoring to launch companies that have grown enormously since, such as Inspire Me Korea, a UK-based global subscription box company, or Bon Petit, the maid.com for fashion. They're creating UK jobs, innovation, and investment. That's the kind of entrepreneurial spirit that should give us hope and give them a home with us. There's an army of like-minded, optimistic problem solvers out there. And by continuing to foster these groups, they will become our natural supporters, because only we truly appreciate their talent and their contribution to our great country. Thank you.
Thank you, Johnny. I'd now like to call to the stage Dinah Black, followed by Jake Calperthwaite and Shaki Batty.
Dear friends and colleagues, I would like to address this conference by drawing attention to the gender pay gap. Closing the pay gap would bring important economic benefits. McKinsey estimates that the UK economy would gain an extra 150 billion by 2025 by closing the gender pay gap. Government Equalities Office estimates that equalising participation rates would add 10% to the size of the UK economy by 2030. There are many causes of the gender pay gap. They include unequally shared caring responsibilities, a divided labour market, and unconscious bias. There are more men at the top than women. The Conservative government has taken positive steps to tackle this problem. Recent programmes encouraging girls to take STEM subjects are effective, but it will take longer time to see their full impact. The important area which still needs addressing is childcare. As a mother of 4 children, I know from my own experience how expensive childcare is. Government's policy, which provides free childcare to 3- and 4-year-olds, is a step in the right direction. But we need to take it further by extending childcare provision and funding places for all preschool children, not just 3- and 4-year-olds. Ideally, we need it to cover 38 hours a week. The government has already taken a step that requires bigger employers to publish their gender pay gap figures. It was achieved by introducing the Pay Gap Information Regulations 2017, which came into force on the 6th of April 2017. But now we need to take a step further. We need to prescribe the employers sets of actions aimed to close the gap further. In addition, a cultural shift is required to encourage men to choose flexible working where possible and to choose the option of the shared parental leave. I hope that drawing your attention to this topic can help us to create future policies to tackle the pay gap issue, so that together we can create an economy that works for everyone. I thank you all for giving me this opportunity to speak about this issue.
In a civilized society, the economy has to work for everyone, otherwise it will work for no one. Providing people with the opportunities that they seek and enabling them to fulfill their aspirations are the defining features of an economy that works in the national interest. As Conservatives, we understand that when it goes right, everyone benefits, and when it goes wrong, no one benefits. Statistics alone will never tell you the full story, because economics is much more about people than it's about numerical figures. There are 3 million more people in work since 2010, bringing the total UK workforce to 32.6 million people. But what does that mean? There are 3 million more people returning home with a pay package due at the end of the month. It's 3 million more people who have the satisfaction and fulfillment of having done a day's work instead of spending a day looking for work. And 9 out of 10 children now live in a home where one or both parents are working, illustrating a good example of how you should live your life. Supporting hard-working people has always been the primary mission for this government, and that's why over 25 million working people have received a typical tax reduction of £800 annually. That's why we have enacted a national living wage of £7.50 an hour, and those people working tirelessly full-time on minimum pay have seen their tax bill halved. These reforms have delivered real positive change to people's lives. But for an economy that works in the national interest, it's also about tackling the divide between generations. That's why we have to draw attention to the fact that since 2010, youth unemployment has fallen by 48%. Young people, like myself, now have greater reassurance that when completing a university degree or an apprenticeship or a college course, they are going to have a realistic prospect of finding suitable employment. Our pension reforms have seen 50% more people enrolled in the workplace pension scheme since 2012, saving to guarantee their dignity and security of well-being in later life. We have also empowered the regulator to monitor more effectively against the mismanagement of pension funds, which risks leaving people in immense difficulty when they retire. Our Help to Buy initiative has assisted 420,000 people in fulfilling their ambition of home ownership, and it will continue to help many more. And due to the creation of a more favourable business environment through measures such as business rates relief and repealing the bureaucratic regulations that hinder firms, we've supported the start-up of 55,000 new businesses since 2010, making Great Britain a country that rewards entrepreneurial spirit. These achievements have contributed towards an economy that works for everyone. There is still progress to be made, but we are going in the right direction, and the right destination is certainly in sight for Great Britain. Thank you.
Conference. The greatest gifts my father ever gave me was to teach me how to stand on my own 2 feet, how to run a business, and how to work hard for my dreams. As a result of those, on Friday, I, Saqib Bhatti, the son of a Pakistani immigrant, was privileged to become the youngest ever president of the Greater Birmingham Chambers of Commerce, and the first... Thank you. And the first of Pakistani Muslim heritage in their 205-year history. As we work hard, As we work hard for our dreams here in the West Midlands, last year alone we created over 75,000 jobs. We are, of course, the only region in the country that has a trade surplus with China. And I'm told, as more and more people choose our beautiful region to come and work, live and play, we are the greatest importers of Londoners anywhere else in the country. So welcome to my beautiful city. However, conference, we cannot be complacent. There is no doubt in my mind that there is a battle of ideas raging in this country right now. When opposition politicians can stand in their own conferences and speak of general strikes, eye-watering levels of borrowing and stifling levels of taxation without any challenge, I'm in no doubt that we must win this battle. My generation has not seen the winter of discontent, and nor must they. As President of the Greater Birmingham Chamber of Commerce, I believe that business is a force for good. It helps create jobs, it helps give purpose, it helps society innovate and drives forward growth. And when things go wrong, we must be quick to act, but we must also ensure that we allow those around us that want the opportunity to succeed to have exactly that. And business is not some opaque term which politicians can attack in some form of lazy rhetoric. It's the individuals that get up every day and every night, grinding away, making something or doing something. It's the sole traders, the entrepreneurs, the innovators, the jobs creators, and the wealth creators. Free enterprise is a part of our most fundamental liberties, and it says regardless of your background, your gender, your race, or your religion, if you want to make something of yourself, you can. Free enterprise, ladies and gentlemen, will be the greatest gift that we can give to our future generations. As President of the Greater Birmingham Chambers of Commerce, I implore you to be confident in the messages of low taxation, free enterprise, and low regulation. I ask you to stand up for the hard-working business people in this city, this region, and this country. And let us create a legacy so when future generations start to face the challenges of their time, they look at us and say, let's do what they did. Thank you.
Conference, we are now going to try to do something a bit different. Greg Clark, the Secretary of State for Business, Energy, Industry Strategy, is currently at the Manufacturing Technology Centre in Coventry. We are now going to join him via satellite link.
Thank you, James. In my job, I spend a lot of time visiting businesses up and down the country. And so I wanted Conference to see what I see and meet some of the people that I meet. And so we're here live at the Manufacturing Technology Centre, just outside Coventry, to talk about our industrial strategy and how it's helping us seize some of the amazing opportunities that are opening up before us today. So I'm with Neil, who helps run the MTC.
Welcome back, Greg.
It's good to be back. Now tell us, Neil, about the MTC and what it does for manufacturing in Britain today.
Well, we're an independent research and technology organisation. We're a partnership between government, industry and academia, and we take those great ideas that come out of our academic base and we scale them up to the point where industry can actually use them.
So it's about the D side of R&D. We've got a brilliant reputation for discovery, but sometimes we let slip through our fingers in the past the deployment of this technology. So you help with that here?
Yeah, we develop the technology to the point where a business can actually use it and get it deployed on the factory floor and improve their productivity.
And you say you work with businesses. How many businesses would you work with?
Last year we worked with 500 different organisations, and 100 of those became industrial members who have a real long-term relationship with us where we help them develop their technology strategy.
We've got behind us, I don't know whether the conference can see, two pretty big robots.
Yeah.
What's their role in advanced manufacturing?
Well, robots and digitisation are a huge part of the future factory. So can I introduce you to Andy, who's
Hi,
one
Good to see you.
of the thought leaders in Europe on what the future factory looks like.
So the factory of the future, is this, we see robots there, is it going to be all robots and no people? What's the interaction going to be?
No, not at all. So we believe at the MTC that there'll always be a place for human skill, dexterity and intuition in manufacturing processes. So our job here is to develop systems where the humans and the robots can work together in a collaborative, safe working environment.
And we'll talk a bit later about how some of those skills are being developed as well. But just talking about robotics and this particular type of technology, what industries is it being deployed in most successfully?
So automotive obviously has been the forefront of automation for many, many years.
Especially here in the West Midlands.
But aerospace, construction, food and drink, and even outer space itself.
So, outer space, I mean, this is an amazing story for the UK. We know that globally the satellite industry is booming. When you think of GPS or monitoring crops from space, the applications extend every single day. And we in the UK are the world's leader in the next generation of small satellites. Over half are manufactured here in the UK. And I think you make a contribution to the development of that technology.
Yes, so we're working closely at the moment with some local universities, developing a manufacturing hub specifically for that sector, and trying to transfer some of the innovative technologies like additive manufacturing into that industry.
And so, as a very successful industry, it's going to get better because, again, as part of our industrial strategy, we've launched the next satellite launch pad, the first one in the whole of Europe. At the moment, when we make these satellites, we've got to ship them out either to South America or to Asia to launch them. We will have the first launch pad in Europe, in the north of Scotland, which will make us even more attractive for this expanding industry. But Andy, you mentioned that skills are important. We talked about R&D and the deployment of technology. Making sure that skills in the workforce keep up with that is important. But I want to talk about some of the other features of the industrial strategy, in particular small businesses. And I think we're going to meet one or two of your colleagues to talk about that.
If I can take you over here. So we work with the global multinationals, but we also work with small supply chain companies. And this is Dean, who runs our very successful small business support program, and Lucy, who runs our design team.
Nice to meet you.
Good to see you. Now, so we've got some very good, very big manufacturers here, but it's crucial. We've always been in the UK a place that incumbents can't take their position for granted. We have insurgents. We have businesses that are challenging them. So how can you help some of those household names of the future?
Well, here at the MTC, we're an open collaboration centre. Last year we had over 35 visitors. A lot of those were SMEs, but we're really proud of having the members, the big corporate members, because they set the challenges for strategy and for the technical problems for the future. So, but around those companies, it really is how the SME and the supply chain delivers into those for the future, and they are the ones that need to adopt these technologies for the future to be competitive on a global scale. And we do that here because we have a dedicated team of manufacturing engineers who firstly go out to the SMEs, they assess the SME, talk to them about what the technologies are coming into the market for the future, and then we bring them here to actually see, test, feel and trial out these new technologies, then hold their hand to implement them back into their own production processes.
So they're SMEs, but also I think it's startups, it's people that have an idea but perhaps not a company yet to develop it, and that is something that you specialise in as well.
Absolutely. Well, a couple of months ago, the Chancellor opened here our new Product Incubation Centre, and in that centre we bring new startups in for the first couple of years of their life to be able to help them design their new products and manufacture their new products. And for that, we need our excellent engineers here, and Lucy heads up part of our design team who helps us bring those products to market.
So Lucy, when it comes to startups or small businesses, sometimes one of the difficulties they encounter is that they don't have the machinery that some of the big players can count on, and also sometimes the know-how, and design is an important part of that, and I think you help with it.
Yeah, definitely, because these small organizations, these startups, they have all the creative ideas, but is it manufacturable? Can it be made? That's where we come in. We use our skills, our design for manufacture skills, our people, together to work with them to create their first prototype and their seed product, and we test it on the market. That way, they're able to compete on a more global scale.
Because sometimes it's the case, isn't it, that they've got a great idea,
yes,
but actually they may not be able to sell it at the market because they haven't taken advantage of the low-cost production techniques, and so you can take an idea and help them make it sell.
Exactly that. So we use our people, our facilities, we test it on a low-cost basis. It's an agile environment. I mean, look at the facilities we've got here. And then once we help them develop that seed product, we test it on the market to see if it is sustainable. And if it is, we let them go. That way they're able to compete locally, regionally, on a global scale.
Fantastic. brilliant. Now, we've talked a lot about skills, we've talked about research and development, we've talked about supporting small businesses and startups. People, crucial pillar of our industrial strategy. Neil, I know you've got a marvellous apprenticeship programme here. Well, can we talk about some of the stars of that programme?
We realised that we wouldn't get the technology into the supply chain companies if we didn't create the people with the knowledge, and that's why we have Melissa and Rishi here.
Hi, Melissa. Hi, Rishi. Thanks for joining us this morning. Now, Melissa, you're in the second year, I think, of your apprenticeship. Now,
Yes, I've just started.
Just started that. So tell us how you chose to do an apprenticeship in engineering. What was in your mind when you chose that?
So when I finished my GCSEs, I had to find out what I wanted to do afterwards. So I thought, what do I enjoy doing? I enjoy the practical work, the hands-on stuff. So when I was doing my research, I found out that engineering was what could help me out with that. So as I came here to MTC for an open evening, I saw what they did. I enjoyed the technology. I liked it. So I ended up coming here.
Now, it's still sadly the case that there are more young women, more young men than young women that go into engineering. So what did your friends say when you said that you were going to be an engineer?
Most of my friends were quite shocked, but it wasn't my friends that were mostly shocked. It was my mom that I had I had to convince her, because she still has that old-fashioned traditional thought that engineering is all mechanical, like you're underneath cars, fixing cars, surrounded by men, that it's a dirty industry. So I had to convince her, but I finally managed to convince her now, because the facilities here are so clean and great, and the technology is amazing, and I think that's something we need to get across to other young women out there, so they can know that you can actually do a lot of other things here. So
there's not much dirt, and there are men, but they're quite nice, and there are lots of women too.
Exactly, yeah.
Now, Rishi, you've just finished your apprenticeship,
Absolutely, yeah.
and congratulations on that. So what next for you?
So I'm currently undertaking a degree with Warwick University, part-time.
Part-time while you're working, so you're earning while you're learning, I assume?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And the next step for me is to become a technical specialist within the theme I work in, which is CNC machining, which is essentially computer numerically controlled machines, which is a form of subtractive manufacture.
So it's directing the machine to cut away materials?
Absolutely, yeah.
Via a computer.
Yeah.
And that's one major technology. How does that take its position against additive manufacturing, laser printing, and the creation of new products through printed parts?
So, Greg, we've realised here that we need the sort of skills that Rishi has to then convert into the engineers of the future for additive manufacturing. So additive will take a very strong position in the future manufacturing landscape, but we know that we need the CNC machining skills to then go into that additive manufacturing supply chain.
So you do both?
We do both, and we're developing those training courses now to convert people from one to the other.
Absolutely. Well, great to meet you both, and good luck for the next stages of your careers. It's great to meet you. Now, we've talked about research and development, we've talked about helping small businesses, we've met some fantastic young people who are being trained in the skills of the future. Another important pillar of our industrial strategy is the importance of place. And of course, in the West Midlands, the place where the first industrial revolution was forged, they know all about this. And I've had the privilege of working very closely with our Mayor of the West Midlands, Andy Street, and he's about to launch the West Midlands Industrial Strategy, which is part of our overall industrial strategy, and he's here with me today to say a bit about what it contains.
Good morning, Greg. Great to be here.
So tell us, what are the key features of the West Midlands Industrial Strategy?
So the great thing about the industrial strategy is it allows every area of the country to really concentrate on what we are each good at. So we can compete not with one another, but internationally. So for the West Midlands, of course, we lead with our advanced manufacturing sector. We're famous, of course, for car manufacturers, but also for aerospace sector. But it's not just about manufacturing in the West Midlands. So we've got great businesses as well in the professional services sector, creative businesses, and some parts of life sciences. So we're getting behind all of those.
One of the things that we've I think both recognise is having a plan, having a long-term plan, while it's there for the long term, can have short-term benefits, and we had some good news on that just a couple of weeks ago.
We did, and it's an interesting case where the government can begin something off in a sort of catalytic way, then private business responds to that. So nearly 12 months ago now, Coventry was successful in the competition to be the centre of the UK Battery Institute. And what that's going to be is really about electric vehicle production. So the government put its cash down, but just a couple of weeks ago, as you say, we heard that a combination of Unipart and Williams, great private sector companies, said they'd be investing in their own manufacturing as well. So it begins that cluster, that idea of a new industry being based here.
Well, it was a great announcement. We've got more to come on that, and of course not just in automotive. On the back of the life sciences part of the industrial strategy, we had a major commitment from a global life sciences company, MSD, to invest for the future on the basis of that strategy. It's great to have you here today, Andy.
Thank you.
Outside Coventry. It's been fantastic to see everything come to life here on the shop floor. We'll have lots of discussions about Brexit this week. But for me, one of the most exciting features of the times ahead of us are the colossal opportunities that we have during an industrial revolution that in many ways is the equal of the first industrial revolution that took place here in the West Midlands and across the UK. If we think about some of the changes that are taking place in almost every industry in the world, artificial intelligence and the analysis of data, the future of mobility, electric vehicles, autonomous vehicles, the astonishing breakthroughs in medical science, and the change in almost every country in the world, from polluting sources of power and its use to clean energy. And in each of these areas, in each of these four grand challenges that the world is facing, the UK has a leading position, and it's one that we must capitalise on during the years ahead. The industrial strategy is precisely forged to enable us to do that. It's been great to be here to see that and to talk about its application in practice today. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to hand back, James, to you in the hall, but thank you to all colleagues in the hall for seeing a bit of what's going on here in just outside Coventry, in Anstey, just outside Coventry, in the West Midlands this morning.
Well, thank you, Greg, and I'm really glad that worked. What a great insight into the future of manufacturing. Conference, we will shortly be hearing from the Chancellor of the Exchequer, but first it gives me great pleasure to welcome the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Liz Truss.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's great to be here, and it's a privilege to follow such esteemed colleagues. Of course, conference is something I look forward to every year. It's a platform for Conservatives to make the big arguments about our country's future, to fight the fight on the great playing field of ideas, or in my case, to talk about cheese. Now, I had prepared a long speech about the merits of the British cheddar trade and exports, but I'm afraid you're all going to have to miss out, because this year I've been told that there's going to be no cheese chat. Conference, that's not just annoying, that is a disgrace. So instead, today I'm going to talk about the Treasury, my relationship with Philip Hammond, and the important work we're doing to prepare Britain for Brexit and the opportunities ahead of us. As Chief Secretary, I'm charged with keeping a tight grip on the public finances. Since 2010, we've had a balanced approach to the economy. investing in frontline public services, so giving public sector workers a fair pay deal, funding the NHS, and backing our nation's defence with extra money for Trident. We've also tackled waste, and we brought the deficit down, meaning that this year our debt will fall as a share of national income. And that's incredibly important work, because government money is our money. Labour think that they can spend as much of all of our money as they like. But what we know is that out-of-control spending means high debt, a weaker economy, fewer jobs, and higher taxes on family and businesses. And just like we saw last time, it's the poorest who are hit hardest when the music stops. So at next year's spending review, the Chancellor and I will be assessing how well we're spending public money and how we can deliver the best possible public services. Being Chief Secretary is a thrilling job, but it has its hazardous side. I'm constantly dealing with Secretaries of State and their requests for more money. It does mean that I've got a bit of a reputation as being a bad cop. And ministers don't always walk away happy. For example, after recently dealing with a request from one Secretary of State, I woke up the next day to find a tarantula in my bed. And what I've learned from that experience is don't mess with David Mundell. Just to be clear, that was a joke. I must admit that I have been told by Treasury spads not to make any jokes, because they don't always go according to plan. But anyone who knows me knows that I hate the government telling me what to do. As well as the important day-to-day business, Philip's Treasury team is fighting to protect the values that make our country great. And we're fighting for the hearts and minds of the next generation, because we've got to challenge the idea that young people are a bunch of Corbynistas. The young people I've met are not heading for the nearest commune. They're entrepreneurs, they're disruptors, they're change makers. And they want a smart and efficient government which has a role but doesn't get in the way of what they're doing. They're compassionate and they care about the public good, but they're also fiercely entrepreneurial and independent. And they're exactly the people Labour are talking about when they describe business as the enemy. It's our duty to challenge Labour's warped ideology that says that personal ambition and success must have come through abuse of the system. That instead, our economy should be run by a committee of Jeremy Corbyn, John McDonnell, and Diane Abbott, those people who have never run anything in their lives. Because, ladies and gentlemen, free enterprise is not about allowing big corporations to flout the rules. It's the opposite of that. It's about the power of competition to deliver lower prices and better services for consumers. And it's about the power of people to be able to transform their own lives, but also the lives across our country and their communities. Those are the freedoms that we are fighting for. And if there's one unsung Conservative hero who's kept our economy on track for the last few years, it's Philip Hammond. He's the boy from Essex with the punk hair and leather jacket. He doesn't often wear it to the office, but he has become the steady hand on the tiller of our economy. In the Treasury, we know him as No Frills Phil, because he's a no-nonsense Chancellor. He champions young entrepreneurs, he supports new technologies like 5G, making sure our economy is fit for the future. And he ensures we spend money in a smart way that delivers results, preparing Britain for a successful future outside the EU, keeping the burden of taxes under control. We've cut income tax for the basic rate taxpayer by £1,000. Philip has lifted infrastructure investment to the highest in 40 years. He's helped craft groundbreaking T-levels to make sure that our young people are getting the skills they need into work. And he's worked with the Prime Minister on our modern industrial strategy to boost the economy and create high-paid jobs. And most important of all, in a time of extraordinary change, he's provided the integrity and stability our country needs to succeed. He is a man of principle with a deep sense of patriotism and optimism about our future. And he's a man that I am proud to call my boss. Ladies and gentlemen, the Chancellor, Philip Hammond.
Well, thank you, Liz, for that introduction. Thank you for tearing yourself away from your beloved Instagram for a few minutes. And thank you, too, for being such a great Chief Secretary and stalwart defender of the public purse. I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, my kids think I'm tight with money, but they haven't met Liz Truss. And in a world obsessed with stories of division and rift in Whitehall, I want to hold up my fantastic Treasury team as an example of how we can and do work together, supporting each other. Liz herself, ministers, Mel Stride, John Glenn, Rob Jenrick in the Lords, Michael Bates, our whips, Craig Whitaker and Lord Young, and our PPS team of Hugh Merriman and Gillian Keegan, led by the inimitable Kwasi Kwarteng. They all do a great job, and they deserve a big round of applause. For me, it's an honour and a privilege, once again, to be addressing this conference as Chancellor in a Conservative government, and to be doing so in Birmingham, a city which has played a pivotal role in the economic history of our country and in the development of the modern Conservative Party. The birthplace of the steam engine, a city which launched an entire new age and went on to become the workshop of the world, paving the way for the prosperity of the Victorian era, and which today is reinventing itself yet again as the heart of the Midlands engine, under a great Conservative Mayor, Andy Street. And as a sign of our commitment to the Midlands engine, I want to start today by announcing funding to support the creation of a new locally led development body for the area around Towton in the East Midlands, to attract investment, create jobs and provide opportunities in this area of huge economic potential. Conference, my birthday present to the Prime Minister is a policy which has the wholehearted support of both Anna Soubry and Andrew Bridgen. Now, I've got some good news for you. This is not going to be a speech all about Brexit, but it is a speech about our economy. And so I'm going to have to talk about Brexit just a little bit, because the outcome, whatever it is, will shape the path of our economy for many years to come, and because, frankly, everyone else is going to. There are a couple of facts which we have to acknowledge and which we cannot change. The first is geographic. Whatever the outcome, Europe will remain firmly anchored just a few miles off the coast of Kent. So they're not going anywhere, I'm told. So we will be neighbours, and we are going to have to carry on living with each other. Come what may, I predict we are going to go on drinking their wine and lying on their beaches, or if you're the Prime Minister, perhaps walking in their mountains, and they are going to carry on speaking our language, or at least many of us will hope they do. The second fact is economic. Europe remains by far our biggest market. And after 45 years of membership, Britain's economy has shaped itself around that fact. Complex supply chains crisscross our borders. Over 11,000 trucks each day pass through the port of Dover and the Channel Tunnel alone, carrying tens of thousands of tons of food, components, and finished products in both directions, with no more delay or bureaucracy than they would crossing the border from England into Wales. And our businesses and the workers whose jobs depend on them need that friction-free access to continue. And that is why I share the Prime Minister's determination to get the Chequers Plan agreed. A plan which delivers on the decision of the British people in the referendum, avoids a hard border in Ireland, preserves our precious union, and safeguards British jobs and British businesses. Now, Mr. Tusk says it won't work, but that's what people said about the light bulb in 1878. And our job now is to prove him wrong. Negotiating and preparing for Brexit is one of the most complex tasks ever undertaken by a peacetime government. So over the next few weeks, we must stand together, foursquare behind the PM, to get the best possible outcome for Britain. While at the same time taking the precaution of preparing for the possibility of no deal. And I want you to be in no doubt that I will maintain enough fiscal firepower in my locker to support our economy if that happens. But I'm going to stick my neck out here today and make a prediction to you that when the Prime Minister gets a deal agreed, there will be a boost to our economic growth, a deal dividend, which we will share in line with our balanced approach between keeping taxes low, supporting public services, reducing the deficit, and investing in Britain's future. But there is another reason why we must stand together, and I want to make a plea to you, Conference, not as Chancellor, but as an ordinary member of the Conservative Party. Because we all have views about how to deliver Brexit. They're all sincerely held, and not, if we're totally honest, 100% aligned. Like everybody in this room, I love my country. All of us are patriots. All of us are on the same side when it comes to our national interest, the side that stands up for Britain and works to get the best outcome for our country. The point is this: Brexit is important, of course it is. And let me be clear, it is going to happen because that is what the country voted for. But when the Brexit debate is over, and difficult as it is today to imagine it, I promise you one day it will be, our work as Conservatives will not be. Because more than ever, Britain will need a strong leadership to see off the threat to our prosperity from Corbyn and to lead our country into our post-Brexit future. Leadership that only a united Conservative Party can provide. And it's that future, Britain's future, that I want to talk to you about today. I'll share with you my vision for our country, and I'll be frank with you about the challenges we must overcome to deliver it. Because Brexit didn't happen in a vacuum. It's a product of something deeper and wider. It happened because over the last 20 years or so, as the world has got smaller, a gap has opened up in Britain and in other developed countries between the theory of how a market economy delivers and distributes rising prosperity and the reality experienced by ordinary people. Too many people feel that they have lost control, that they are working for the system, but the system isn't working for them. Too many people have experienced years of slow wage growth. Too many struggle to make ends meet. They feel less secure in their jobs and have seen the housing market spiral beyond their reach. And as they look around them, they feel a growing concern that they are falling behind, and that when they voice those concerns, the political system doesn't seem to hear them, doesn't reflect their values and priorities. So our challenge is to ensure that 21st century capitalism delivers for those people, convinces them that our vision of Britain's future can meet their aspirations and that our plan will deliver a better tomorrow for them and their families. But the world is changing. So it isn't just about what people have experienced over the last 20 years, but about their hopes and their fears for the future. Technological change is transforming not only our economy, but our society and our politics at a rate that none of us in this hall have seen in our lifetimes. And in response, we as a party have to dare to change too, not by abandoning our enduring values and principles, but by applying them to the challenges of the future. And when the history books of this period come to be written, I can promise you that it will be this technological transformation and how we manage it, not Brexit, that will define the future of our country and our party. Now, despite what you may think, or you may even have read in certain newspapers, I'm an optimist. Well, I've heard some call me glass half full Phil. It depends, of course, who's buying. But I'm an enthusiast for the change that is coming and for the benefits it will bring to our society. And I'm committed to preparing Britain for it. In the next decade or so, artificial intelligence, self-driving cars, personalized medicine, virtual reality, advanced robotics, and many, many other cutting-edge developments will all begin to transform our lives. A future where cars don't pollute and we've all but eliminated traffic accidents. Where you're able to order and 3D print a product at home rather than waiting for it to be delivered. Where cancer is tamed, so that fewer of us have to go through the heartache of losing a loved one to this cruel disease. All of this is science fact, not fiction. All of it already taking shape now, not in the distant future. And most importantly, all of it happening here in the UK, in our world-leading universities, in our research institutes and laboratories, and in thousands of dynamic and innovative businesses in towns and cities across the length and breadth of Britain. But I understand that my enthusiasm for driverless cars may not be so readily shared by someone who earns their living driving a cab, and that home 3D printing may look more of a threat than an opportunity to someone who works for a parcel delivery firm. So we have to take our people with us, be open with them about the scale and nature of the change that is coming, about the disruption that change on this scale will inevitably bring. Set out clearly the benefits that individuals and families will see from the digital age, and how we will help them to prepare for it and to deal with the consequences of it. Reassure the very many who will worry about what new technologies mean for their job security. Worry that the gains will be made by the few and that they will be left behind. Show them that, crucially, the change that technology is driving will address their concerns, not make them worse. And we will do this by harnessing the power of the market economy, taking a model which has evolved continuously down the ages so that the capitalism of the 21st century looks nothing remotely like that of the 19th, and adapting it once again to address the challenges and speak to the values of a new generation. Because those challenges can only be overcome by harnessing that power of the market. That is the only way to deliver our social, economic, and environmental goals, to build a better Britain for our children. And Conference, this mission is urgent. Because if we cannot make that case convincingly, if we cannot demonstrate our commitment to making that evolution happen, if we look for one moment like the party of no change, then we should not be surprised that some will be tempted by the dangerous populism of our opponents. Because it's clear from what we heard last week from Labour that this country now faces a choice. A choice between the seductive simplicity of the brave new world of Corbyn and McDonnell's populism, where the narrative is all about easy answers, and our pragmatism. A pragmatism which is sceptical of ideologues, which starts with the real world we live in and seeks to make it better. A pragmatism that recognises that there are no shortcuts and no free lunches on the road to a better Britain, that no wealth is created without work, no gain without sacrifice, no reward without effort. Because let's be clear, the rules of the game have changed. For goodness sake, we've got a shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer whose declared aim in life is fomenting the overthrow of capitalism. Now, Liz, that really is a disgrace. The model that has delivered 200 years of economic growth, that has seen living standards in this country more than double in my lifetime, that has lifted countless hundreds of millions out of poverty around the world and has secured our precious freedoms and our liberties down the ages, is rejected out of hand by Corbyn and McDonnell in favour of the failed and faded ideologies of socialism. Not because they believe they would enhance economic growth, but because they don't care about economic growth, because they are more interested in redistributing wealth than in creating more of it, because they value political ideology above real-world solutions for real people. All they have to do, if you're a socialist, is look it up in the socialist manual. Railways? Nationalise them. Wealth? Confiscate it. Run out of money? Just go and borrow some more. Answers from a discredited ideology that will never solve real-world problems. A backward-looking party, intellectually unequipped to tackle the complex challenges of the 21st century and totally unfit to govern this country. Conference, Jeremy Corbyn boasts that Labour are a government in waiting. Well, I say let's keep him waiting this year, next year, and every year. But let me be clear about one thing. While Labour's answers will solve nothing, their questions deserve a response. And we must answer their challenges with our own conservative solutions, based on realism, not populism, delivery, not rhetoric. It's what we Conservatives have always done, and it's what we will do again, showing ourselves worthy of the privilege of governing post-Brexit Britain, harnessing the power of the market economy, focusing on the long-term and the structural, not the quick and the superficial. Because, Conference, we know that you can't get long-term change on Amazon Prime, ordered today and delivered tomorrow. As our party renews its mandate for the next generation, this is the ground on which we must fight. Margaret Thatcher, as so often, put it beautifully. She said, "We are in the business of planting trees for our children and our grandchildren, or we have no business being in politics at all." Colleagues, we will not outbid Corbyn with short-term gimmicks that cause long-term damage. We will not outspend him with reckless borrowing. We will not promise the illusory utopia that he offers, because as those who have tried it have shown time and time again, it is based on a lie and it always ends in tears. But no one should mistake our belief in evolution over revolution for a lack of passion or commitment to change, to a paucity of values or ideals. Because throughout history, Conservative governments from Peel to Disraeli to Thatcher have delivered momentous change, drawing on our values that have stood the test of time. The importance of family and community, the strength of our nation, united by history, culture, and identity, standing strong as a force for good in the world. The insight that economic freedom goes hand in hand with political freedom. And above all, the belief in the power of enterprise as the route to unleash talent and to improve lives. That is why we back business. We back business as the cornerstone of a successful economy, as a force for good in our society, and as an essential expression of our values. So just in case anyone, anywhere in the world was in any doubt at all, let me say it loud and clear. The Conservative Party is and always will be the party of business. That means we listen to business, and we have listened, and we've heard the concerns about how the apprenticeship levy is working. So today, we've set out a series of measures to allow firms more flexibility in how the levy is spent. But we know, there's one employer down there, but we know that we may need to do more to ensure that the levy supports the development of the skilled workforce our economy needs. So in addition to these new flexibilities, we will engage with business on our plans for the long-term operation of the levy. Government working hand in hand with employers to ensure that every young person can fulfill their potential and achieve their dreams. And working alongside Be the Business, we will provide £30 million of support for a business-led initiative to get big companies to mentor small companies so that they can develop their management and leadership skills to make the most of their potential, strengthening the backbone of our economy from the ground up. And enterprise, freedom, stability, family, community, nation. These are our conservative values. They have served us well over the centuries past, and they will serve us well in the years ahead. Values do not change. The task before us now is to apply these values to the challenges of the 21st century. And we've made a start. 10 years on from the financial crisis, Conservative leadership has delivered Britain a stronger, more resilient economy. We've rebuilt our financial system, forcing the banks to operate with greater responsibility, protecting savers, insisting that our financial markets must serve our country and not the other way round. We've got Labour's deficit, which reached almost 10% of GDP, down to less than 2%. And this year, thanks to the difficult decisions that we've taken and the hard work of the British people, we will at last see our national debt starting its first sustained fall in a generation. We've delivered 8 years of economic growth since 2010, creating over 3 million more jobs and taking unemployment to a 43-year low. We've announced an unprecedented £84 billion real terms funding boost for the NHS, what the NHS says it needs, and more than Labour promised at the last election, showing our commitment to Britain's most vital public service. We've maintained Britain as the world's 5th largest economy and London as the world's financial capital. We've delivered tax cuts for 31 million people, and our national living wage has lifted the wages of the lowest paid in our society by £2,000 a year since 2016. And that means that income inequality is lower this year under a Conservative government than it was in every single year of the last Labour government. That's a remarkable record of achievement, and we should be justifiably proud of it. After the years of hard work to rebuild our economy and our public finances, there is light at the end of the tunnel. But our pride in achievement does not lead us to complacency. We must now apply this same approach to renew the mandate for the market economy in the 21st century, and with it, the mandate of the modern Conservative Party to govern. A focus on what is in the long-term interest of our country and our people, so that when those children and grandchildren of whom Margaret Thatcher spoke so eloquently ask us what our generation is doing for them, we can look them in the eye and tell them how we are building the better Britain we want to bequeath to them. We can tell them about how we've raised public investment to the highest level in generations, building and upgrading the roads and railways that connect our country and the digital infrastructure that will enable the future. We can tell them how our reforms are unlocking billions of pounds of much-needed investment in high-growth businesses, and about how our Northern Powerhouse and Midlands Engine and our mayoral devolution and city and growth deals are beginning at last to address the regional imbalances in our economy. We can tell them about how our modern industrial strategy is preparing for the future by putting Britain at the cutting edge of a technology revolution which will improve the lives of people across the world, and will be the bedrock on which our future prosperity is built, creating millions of new, better paid jobs for British workers. We can tell them how we are building more homes than any government since the 1980s and are on course to reach 300,000 additional homes a year, about the support that Help to Buy and stamp duty abolition have already delivered to hundreds of thousands of home buyers, all key steps on the road to restoring the Conservative dream of home ownership for millions of young people the length and breadth of our country. And we can tell them how we are making sure that working people have the support they need to navigate the challenge of automation to a higher wage future, with a new system of T-level vocational training, millions of high-quality apprenticeships, and a world-first national retraining scheme. And today, I can announce £100 million government funding as an initial contribution to delivering this scheme in partnership with the CBI and the TUC. And we can tell our children of our determination to update our market economy for the digital age. Adam Smith taught us that the key to the power of the market to deliver for the good of society is competition. And just as in the late 19th century America, concerns about the near monopoly of Standard Oil and the railroad cartels led to the introduction of the world's first anti-monopolies legislation, so today, the expansion of the global tech giants and digital platforms, while of course bringing huge benefits to consumers, raises new questions about whether too much power is being concentrated in too few global technology businesses. That's why I've asked President Obama's former chief economist, Jason Furman, to lead an expert panel to review the UK's competition regime to ensure that it is fit for the digital era. And it isn't just competition policy that needs updating. We can tell our children how we have led the debate on reforming the international tax system for the digital economy, insisting that the global internet giants must contribute fairly to funding our public services. And I want to be crystal clear today. The best way to tax international companies is through international agreements. But the time for talking is coming to an end, and the stalling has to stop. So if we cannot reach agreement, the UK will go it alone with a digital services tax of its own. Conference, I have set out my argument for the renewal of our economic creed to secure for Britain the benefit of the market economy for the years to come, to ensure it can respond to the concerns and meet the aspirations of the next generation, because Corbyn's plan offers no future for Britain, and it is our duty to provide a better answer, to make the case for the long term over the short term, for the substantial over the superficial, for evolution over revolution. Our duty is to agitate constantly, restless to improve the lives of ordinary families across this country, looking beyond Brexit into our future, to map out the path to Britain's continued success. Conference, I have 3 children, and I want for your children and grandchildren what I want for mine. For them to live in a country that is built on secure foundations, with its best days still to come, and ready to capitalize on the untold promise of the century that lies before us. So we need to have the courage now to regenerate capitalism once again, to pass on something worthwhile to the next generation. That is what being a Conservative is all about. And to those who will say that the measured message of evolution will be drowned out by the shrill voices of the demagogues and the populists, I say, put our trust in the common sense of the British people, and they will put their trust in us. And to those who will ask if the Conservative Party has the stomach for this fight, I say, Conference, I know this party and I know that we do. I know we have the wisdom to put the differences of today behind us. I know we have the reserves and the energy to focus on the challenges still to come. I know that we have the resolve to fight for our children's future, for a sustainably better Britain, a Britain with a world-leading NHS, with first-class education and training, a welfare system that is focused on work, an environment that we will leave in a better state than we found it, streets that are safe, homes for the next generation, armed forces that are respected around the world, a Britain with an economy that creates opportunities for all, a beacon to the world, a land of entrepreneurs, of creators, of designers, doers, thinkers, makers, a civilized, tolerant, successful nation, respected and admired the world over. That is the Britain that I want to build, so that when our children ask us what we did with the privilege of our time in office, we can tell them with our heads held high, we built a better Britain for you. Thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon and welcome to Birmingham, live from Conservative Party Conference. I'm Asa Bennett and I've got Anna Mikolova back here again with me. Hello. Now, we've just had Philip Hammond speak, and so the conference is abuzz with box office fill, lighting up the audience. I mean, well, I may be joking a tiny bit, but what did you think, really, Anna?
I thought it was a fine speech for Philip Hammond. I think he presented some more optimistic outlooks, I think, as we discussed on Brexit, on Britain's future. He tried to set out a vision for Britain, talked a lot about disruptive technology, artificial intelligence, which looked a little bit like he was going off topic, but came back.
Seems to be his passion, at least. Something to talk about so you can see the future, far-seeing, ambitious.
Yes. I mean, he didn't say anything out of it that was particularly insightful, but he does seem keen on talking about it. There were quite a lot of attacks on Labour, which looks a little bit defensive. Echoed Esther McVey this morning, who spent half her speech attacking Labour and not presenting any policy.
I think his attitude, he tried to be consciously very positive, and yet, again, the classic jokes just fell so flat when he was beginning with that oddly brutal, "Thank you, Liz Truss, for tearing yourself away from Instagram." Oh, please, no. And the thing is that what doesn't make me laugh, I'd say, is his domestic policy. How obviously he's having to try and fund the extra billions for the NHS as part of the Brexit
which
pledge.
he did reference again, and which this morning he strongly suggested would lead to tax rises.
Yes. And it's sort of very much like classic funereal Undertaker Tony adopts all these things. It's an inevitability. That's his attitude. It's sort of, given that the whole thing in the background, we must remember, of whether he's going to raise fuel duty, for example, to break the escalator. It seems some very...
I mean, to give him some credit, this is party conference. He's about to make a big budget, or a budget in October. So he was never going to announce big policy changes. But some of the turns on the direction were interesting.
Yes, the deal dividend he forecast.
Yes, so that was an interesting. Came out in support of Chequers and said that while he will be holding all his fiscal firepower ready for a no-deal scenario, he also emphatically mentioned that there would be a deal dividend.
And so, do you think that's believable? Because obviously he's, in his own words, stuck his neck out and said, once we've got a deal, the economy will start effectively motoring again. And
well, he would just make he's in support of going for Theresa May's Chequers plan and definitely going
that
for
was
a
Chris.
deal.
He actually said Chequers by name. He dropped the C-bomb, and it's and people applauded him during that. And yet, Dominic Raab earlier in the morning seemed to dance around it a bit, spoke about our plans, and others like Jeremy Hunt just preferred to savage the EU, suggesting they like the USSR yesterday. So it seems he's the first, although Brexiteers may not appreciate that someone like Remainer Phil is someone who's happy to embrace Chequers so openly.
Yes, it sends a signal. I mean, we all know he supports Theresa May and he has been in the Chequers camp, but saying it so public in his main speech does send a signal, you're right. Another interesting thing, he mentions the strongest indication to date that he would entertain an Amazon tax, so a tax on the digital giants. He said that while the best way to make companies like Facebook, Amazon pay is to have an international agreement, the UK does consider going out alone and striking out on its own and making its own laws, because he said the time to talk on this is running out. So that was interesting as well for business.
Yeah. Like he definitely was trying to offer some red meat for members to chew on. But
he said it was the party of business.
In relation to a certain former foreign secretary and his fruity alleged remarks about business. That said, the thing is, finally, what struck me was in a conference that's dominated by the word opportunity, which you can see it behind us, it's everywhere around conference. It seems like many members of the front bench are seizing the opportunity to set out their stalls, their visions for the future. And did it strike you, because it did for me, that Philip Hammond is laying out what Hammondism might be?
Yes, there was that, and the bigger picture references certainly play into that, from the future of technology and work to name-dropping Margaret Thatcher twice, I believe. He was trying to make a much bigger statement, although it is slightly held back by references to Tory infighting, of which there are a couple of veiled ones,
yes.
and references to Labour. So, there's a mix of both.
Well, quite so. Well, that's classic Hammond for you, I guess. And there'll be much more action to enjoy over the coming days, with Sajid Javid talking tomorrow, Theresa May wrapping everything up on Wednesday. So tune in next time, and thanks very much.